Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this session of Self Improvement through the Quran series. This is the 25th session. I'm going to read out the text and translation of today's passage. It is from Surah Al-Anam, which is the sixth surah of the Quran, verses 151 and 152. قُلْ تَعَالَوْا أَتْلُ مَا حَرَّمَ رَبُّكُمْ عَلَيْكُمْ أَلَّا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا ولا تقتلوا أولادكم من إملاق نحن نرزقكم وإياهم ولا تقربوا الفواحش ما ظهر منها وما بطن ولا تقتلوا النفس التي حرم الله إلا بالحق ذلكم وصاكم به لعلكم تعقلون ولا تقربوا مال اليتيم إلا بالتي هي أحسن حتى يبلغ أشده وأوفوا الكيل والميزان بالقسط ولا نكلف نفسا إلا وسعها وإذا قلتم فاعدلوا ولو كان ذا قربى وبعهد الله أوفوا ذلكم وصاكم به لعلكم تذكرون. Tell them, come, I shall tell you what your Lord has forbidden to you. Do not associate anything with him. So this is again a passage which you have just seen. It spells out some of the attributes of the believers, and we shall study them one by one. The first of them is that they do not associate anyone with God. And as we know that this is a mortal sin, as far as the Quran is concerned, it regards polytheism to be something which a person has absolutely no proof of. The Almighty says that this is iftara al-Allah, which means it is imputing falsehood to God. A person just cannot know if there is someone besides God unless God himself tells us this information to people. And God says that I have never disclosed any such thing. So if people are imputing or ascribing partners to me, then they are doing it out of their own selves without my sanction. And precisely for this reason, it says that this is one of the most heinous sins, and it's an unforgivable sin. So the passage starts off with this very, very loud and clear declaration that as far as believers are concerned, they should know that the biggest thing which is forbidden to them is to associate partners with God, and they should not associate anyone with him. So remember, we should not associate partners with his being, with his attributes, and with his rights. As far as God is concerned, he is our only savior. He is the only being whose doors we can knock all the time. And one of the greatest tests of faith which a person undergoes is when he is passing through testing circumstances, and when seemingly circumstances continue to be very hard and tough on him, and he still continues to invoke God, beseech God, but things don't improve. And it is this test of faith which God wants us to go through, that we still continue to call on him, beseech him, whatever the outcome, and not at this instance lose hope in him and then knock at the doors of other people. So distress and depression and lack of success in our endeavors, these are things which can make a person frustrated and disappointed and make him go to other people or to other beings and ask help for them. And this is a test that we have to always think about in advance, that we must not succumb to these trying circumstances. And then it says, وَلَا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. So as is the customary case and style of the Quran, that right after the rights of God are mentioned, the rights of parents, they come immediately after. And the words are, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. You treat your parents with kindness. So treating parents with kindness is something that should come to us naturally. But in spite of that, we need to be reminded that parents, particularly when they reach old age, when they have their own life in a way that they are behaving in such a way as if they are, once again, they have started their own life and they are behaving like young children. So it is here that we need to be extremely patient, because parents, they do tend to become repetitive. They do insist on small things. They might throw some tantrums as well. So in all such situations, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, we have to keep reminding ourselves that patience and kindness is something that must always come out of ourselves. We should never be impatient, never scold them, never think that they are a burden on us, and always remember the favors that they did to us and the amount of affection and sacrifice and love they showered upon us when we were growing is something that we can never pay back. So when the time arrives, then we have to pay back or treat them in a way that they should feel comfortable emotionally as well as psychologically. In both these situations, we have to make them realize that they are very welcome to us. And the biggest thing that we can contribute to our parents is that emotional attachment by giving them time, by spending time with them, and also sharing our whatever our daily routines were, because you see, they are always on the lookout to find out how their children spent their day. So sitting by them and sharing your own activity of the past one day is something which really makes their day. وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ مِنْ إِمْلَاقٍ, and do not kill your children for fear of poverty. This was a heinous practice in the days of Jahiliyyah and pre-Islamic society, that young girls would be they would be buried alive and they would be killed, and also children would be killed, and it was purely because of poverty. And people would think that, well, we have produced someone and we are hardly able to cater for our own needs, so how can we cater for the needs of our newborn as well? And they would just put that very, very innocent young soul to death. And I mean, we just cannot even imagine the extent of the repulsiveness of this crime, and the nature of this crime is something that is even unimaginable for us. So God actually warns people and says, "Nahnu narzuqukum wa iyyahum." So if we are feeding you, the address is to the parents, then why do you feel afraid and scared? We are going to feed them as well. So it's not that you are feeding yourself. Yes, you are trying your best and you're working, but it's God's will and it's God's circumstances that He creates that you are able to earn for yourselves. So if He can do this for yourselves, why can't He do this for the young ones that you have just produced? So نحن نرزقكم وإياهم ولا تقربوا الفواحش ما ظهر منها وما بطن. So the next thing which is mentioned is that do not go near vulgarities, whether they are open or forbidden or hidden. So لا تقربوا الفواحش ما ظهر منها وما بطن. So the first thing that we need to note here is it's not said that do not indulge in vulgarities. Rather, the stress is don't even go near them, which actually tells us that things which might lead to vulgarities, indecency, especially adultery and its related acts, they have to be stayed away from far away. So precisely for this reason, we are told that we should not let our sight or our gaze take undue liberty and stare at the opposite gender in any way and let it wander away in lust. So precisely for this reason, we are told that we should have decency in our eyes. We should not at all stare at the opposite gender in the way we do generally when we have those feelings of sex for the opposite gender. They have to be in a very, very decent way, as if you're looking towards your own brother or your sister. That is how you should look at people who are not known to you or who are known, but they are unrelated in any sense. So the other important thing is that these vulgarities, as the Quran states here, ma zahara minha wa ma batan, that stay away from what is hidden and stay away from which is apparent or which is open. So you see, indecencies and vulgarities, they don't both have these forms, the inner form and the outer form. The inner form refers to the intention that we have, the heart, which is the center of our soul. And it starts off with the heart. I mean, all these feelings, they start off with the heart, and then your eyes and your other limbs, they follow it. So the Quran has said that don't even think of going near these vulgarities. And these vulgarities could be related to your heart, your own intentions, and they could be related to your outer limbs. So abstain from both these, because they are going to lead you to excesses, and they are things which can be damaging to your family life. So you see, one of the biggest tenets which the Quran explains vis-a-vis our family life is that a family is a building block of a society. In order to have a prosperous society, in order to have a society which is built on healthy footings, it is essential that the basic unit of that society, which is the family, must be built on sound footings, and that can only happen if the spouses are devoted to one another. They don't look out of this marital agreement. They don't have any outer extramarital relations with anyone, because this is going to damage the whole family setup, and as a result, the whole society would become damaged. So it is because of this reason that the Quran lays great stress on family life, and anything which can be detrimental to family and its well-being is something which it stops. So vulgarities, indecencies, extramarital relation, adultery, fornication, all these things are things which the Quran stops from. But yes, they begin from one's thinking and from one's heart, and that is why the Quran tells us that don't even let your thoughts go astray. Yes, the thoughts can come, but don't pursue them, and don't succumb to them, and don't be led away by them. وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا النَّفْسَ الَّتِي حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ. And do not kill without justification any soul forbidden by God. So taking anyone's life is something which a person is absolutely not authorized. Of course, if the person whose life is to be taken is guilty of killing someone, or is guilty of spreading anarchy in the land, these are the two only reasons for which the life of a person can be taken, and that too by state authorities when the punishment is to be given. The law cannot be taken in one's own hand, and in the first place, this is something of a heinous thing. The Quran tells us, "One qatala mu'minan muta'ammidan fajaza'uhu jahannam." A person who kills a believer intentionally, then for him is hell, and the verse goes on to say that this is eternal hell for that person. So killing someone is such a thing that it could lead a person to eternal damnation, and precisely for this reason, the sanctity of human life is very much amplified in scriptures. It is stated in very, very, very vociferous words and unequivocal style, so that a person has this inclination that taking human life or tampering with human life is something which is an extreme and grave sin. ذَلِكُمْ وَصَّاكُمْ بِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. These are the things God directs you to, so that you use your intellect. So these are the things which the Almighty says that you have to follow and use your intellect. And if you are able to use your intellect, it should not become difficult to you that whatever is stated here is something that you must never indulge in. وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا مَالِ الْيَتِيمِ إِلَّا بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ حَتَّى يَبْلُغَ أَشُدَّهُ. And do not go near the wealth of an orphan except in the way that is better for him until he reaches maturity. Again, as guardians of orphans, people are told that they must not tamper with the wealth of orphans, thinking that they are guardians. And yes, if situation is such that you need to benefit from their wealth as guardians, as in the capacity of their guardians, you should only spend as much as is needed to fulfill your duty as a guardian, and must not waste away that money in any way, thinking that you'll have to hand it over as soon as the orphan reaches maturity. So orphans are people, or they are individuals who are weakest in the society, and the Quran has at a number of instances given them this protection and warned the guardians that they must not in any way embezzle money from their own money. So وَأَوْفُوا الْكَيْلَ وَالْمِيزَانَ بِالْقِسْطِ, and weigh with honesty and full measure. Once again, Arabs being traders, they are told, remember, this is something which is unforgivable. When you weigh less and when you measure less, then you are being dishonest in your trade, in your business, and that is something which is unacceptable. You have to understand this, that it is the requisite of truth and justice that you must weigh and measure properly. لا نكلف نفسا إلا وسعها. And the Almighty says that we do not burden a soul with more than it can bear. وَإِذَا قُلْتُمْ فَعْدِلُوا وَلَوْ كَانَ ذَا قُرْبَى. And when you speak the truth, even if the matter is about your relatives. So this is stated because people are generally very sensitive towards their relatives. They would like to please them. The Almighty says that you have to speak the truth, even if it is something that might displease your relatives. So it's not something that a person should indulge in merely fearing the anger of a relative. Come what may, you have to speak the truth and be absolutely fair in this regard. وَبِأَهْدِ اللَّهِ أَوْفُوا, and fulfill God's promise. ذَلِكُمْ وَصَّاكُمْ بِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ. These are the things which God directs you so that you receive a reminder. So fulfill God's promise means that whatever promise that you make with God, the Sharia that you need to follow, the misak that you have made with God, that must be fulfilled, because these are the things which God reminds you. These are the things that He directs you to do, so that you receive a reminder. So the purpose of the Quran is to remind us of all these facts that are already found in our human nature, and as a principle, we honor them. We do think that these are virtues, but we tend to forget them. And the Quran, as usual, reminds us that this is something that we should not forget. And this brings us to an end to this discussion on this passage, and we can now open the floor for any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad, for this valuable talk today. The first question that I have today is from Abdullah Zishan. Abdullah Zishan, you may go ahead.
डॉक्टर साहब, मैं एक सिनेरियो रख के एक सवाल पूछना चाह रहा हूँ कि मान लीजिए एक इंसान है जिसको ना बहुत ज्यादा बुली किया गया है, एंड इट हैज गॉन टू एक्सट्रीम लेंथ्स एंड सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ. वो बड़ा होता है और उसकी दिल की जो बड़ाई है उसकी वजह से ना वो माफ कर देता है उनको. सो दोज पीपल विल दे बी फ्री फ्रॉम द पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू ऑफ अकाउंटेबिलिटी ऑन द डे ऑफ जजमेंट, या अल्लाह ताला फिर उसका
You see, whenever when you do something wrong, you have to apologize to that person and seek his forgiveness, and also seek forgiveness from the Almighty. So this forgiveness is something which has to be sought from both. And if the person whom you have offended, he forgives you, then it is generally the Almighty's practice that He would also forgive you. So, but the bottom line is that you have to seek forgiveness from both the Almighty and the person that you have harmed. And if they forgive you, only then in the hereafter would you not be penalized.
Thank you. Samra Harun, you may go ahead now.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum, sir. Sir, my question is, what is meant by Qarz-e Hasana? Like in Surah Hadid, Ayat 18, it says that it mentions sadaqat as well as Qarz-e Hasana. So in my understanding, isn't all the money we give as charity is not for worldly gains, but it's a curse to Allah, in the sense that He will return it to us manifold in the hereafter.
Right. So this is a term which is used by the Quran for any emergency situations that arise in an Islamic state. And in those times, one of the most common emergency situations that would arise would be war and jihad. So money would be elicited from people because there was no standing army, and weapons and horses and camels, not horses, but mostly camels, would be used for this, and they would be provided by people who would be owning them, and at times they would be bought from them as well. So manzal lazi yuqrizullaha qarzan hasana, these are the words from Surah Hadid. They actually tell us that who is it that who's going to give God this goodly loan. So Qarz-e Hasan has become a terminology in our own affairs, and we think that this is a loan which is given on easy installments, and a person can pay it back on a long-term basis. But this is not used in the same sense in the Quran. Whenever it is used in this sense, in most cases it is used for, as I said, situations in which an appeal is made by the government to provide money for some emergent cause, which was mostly jihad in those times, so that people could do so. And as we see from the Quran, that the appeal is both for the persons that would be needed for this particular endeavor, and also for money that would be needed to buy weapons. And God says that this will be like a loan to him, and He's going to repay this many times back. And today also, by extrapolation, that all emergent needs which religion requires for its preservation, for its dissemination, for its education and understanding, all emergent needs, all needs for which special effort has to be made. So a government can call out for such loans from people. But the present scenario that in which we think that Qarz-e Hasan means loan which is given on easy installments, this is, I'm afraid, a misunderstanding, or it's something which is not properly derived from the Quran. The Quran uses these words for, as I said, mostly for jihad, and it encourages and inspires and motivates people that if you do so, remember it's something that it is a loan to God. You see, it's like it's like a paradox, because you see, God doesn't need that loan, and it is we who need that loan. So it's like something being told to us that, well, this is something that you should have spent anyway, but now God is asking you as something, and He's going to return it back to you. So God doesn't need that money, but He's still asking you. So it's like a paradoxical thing in which, on the one hand, you are being motivated to do something, and the thing which is being motivated for is something which God could have done for His own self. He doesn't need human beings to do that, but He gives them this opportunity so that they can really earn windfall gains and a lot of reward from the Almighty.
Yeah. Yes. So from what I understand, is it fine for us to say that there's a clear difference between sadaqat and qarz hasana?
Yes, of course. You see, qarz and is a loan. Sadaqat, they are not loan. So remember, the fundamental difference is that charity is, you don't give charity, you don't lend charity. Whereas this is, you are lending something. And again, this is a very affectionate term used by the Almighty, because you don't lend to the Almighty. It's not that it's a loan in the sense that we lend to people in our surroundings. This is something that you give to God, or for the dissemination of the works of God, or the things that God patronizes. So the rough distinction that you can make is sadaqat and charity. They are generally given for the society, for the underprivileged, and even for their welfare projects. Whereas qarz hasan is something which is given at the demand of a Muslim state for some particular emergent situation.
But in reality, we are when we're giving charity, we are giving a curse in a sense to Allah Ta'ala.
Well, that also is true. That also is true, because this is what God has been very magnanimous about. That when you give something, He's going to repay you back manifold. So, in essence, that is in a broad way, you can even call your charity to be to be exactly the same thing. But as I said, in the true sense of the word, wherever the Quran uses this term, it is basically an appeal made by the state for something which is emergent in the society, which is needed very badly for the cause of religion. And in the Quran, mostly this was used, as you can see from these verses of Surah Hadid also, in the background of jihad and qital.
So, sir, I think we should stop using this term in a day-to-day life, right? We should not be using.
Yes, because you see, because it has generally been used in a sense that, as I said, easy installments, loans which are given for a long-term period on small installments, they are said to be qarz hasan, whereas there is no such basis to use this term in this meaning in the Quran.
Okay. Thank you so much. You have clarified everything. Jazakallah.
Thank you, Fabia Niazi. You may ask your question now.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम रहमतुल्लाह। बस साहब, आपने ये जो पैराग्राफ हमें सुनाया है, इसमें ये मैरिड पीपल को जो तलकीन की गई है कि वो अपनी ज़ौज तक महदूद रहेंगे, ये नफसानी ख्वाहिश के पर्सपेक्टिव में की गई है। इसके पीछे मकसद क्या है? हम उस्ताद जी के लेक्चर्स और आपने भी इस ज़ुमरे में लेक्चर्स दिए हुए हैं, उनसे हमें बखूबी इल्म है कि मकसद क्या है इसका। मगर प्रोफेसर साहब, नफ्सियाती तस्कीन भी एक चीज़ है जो एक इंसान को अपने जोड़े से चाहिए होती है, और जब हम नज़र डालते हैं माशरे में, ख़ानदानों में, तो ऐसे बहुत सारे केसेस हमारे सामने आते हैं कि जिसमें ख़वातीन घर को एक ऐसा मैदान बनाती हैं जिसमें वो एक टसल जारी रखती हैं। अब इसमें एक बीवी को ना लें, घर में 3-4 ख़वातीन होती हैं, मुख्तलिफ रिश्ते होते हैं, तो वो एक टसल का मैदान जब होता है, तो ऐसे में शौहर को नफ्सियाती तस्कीन घर से नहीं मिल रही, क्योंकि बच्चे भी औरत के कंट्रोल में होते हैं, बाकी लोगों को भी वो एक तरह से कंट्रोल कर रही होती है, एक गेमिंग की तरह। तो नफ्सियाती तस्कीन के लिए भी मर्द हज़रात जो है वो बाहर तलाश करने लग जाते हैं, और उनको फिर भी जाते हैं ऐसे लोग जिनसे वो नफ्सियाती तस्कीन हासिल करें। यानी पीछे मुहर्रिक नफ्सानी ख्वाहिश नहीं है। अब ऐसे में अब मर्द हज़रात को क्या करना चाहिए? और बाकी ख़वातीन तो ज़ाहिर बात है उनको तलकीन नसीहत कर सकते हैं, वो माने या ना माने, लेकिन मर्द क्या करे फिर?
You see, the first thing that a husband should realize is that this world is a place of trial and test. You don't get everything that you would like to what you expect that should happen to you. There are things in which you are able to fulfill your own heart's desire. You are able to fulfill you find fulfillment with your spouse, and there are areas in which this is not possible because of certain circumstances. So you see, this life is not supposed to be a bed of roses. It's not supposed to be a place in which you're going to get everything that you desire for. There are situations in which, in spite of the fact that you would like psychological satisfaction from your spouse, but for some reason this is not provided. However, this is not license enough for that person to then look out of that marriage bond and start his psychological satisfaction by maybe indulging in relations with some other woman or some other person. As I said, yes, this is a very genuine problem. This is something that men face and women also face. And it's not just with men. Both husbands and wife, they do face this, because it's not always that things go very smoothly. But in fact, let me say this, that in most cases, they don't go smoothly. But if you see, what we have to do is to try to make these things work as best as possible. Both the husband and the wife need to understand that they must have a workable relationship here as far as possible. Things can never be ideal here. It is a situation in which all of us have, we have to endure the situation. It's like a challenge that has been thrown towards us. It's a gauntlet that has been thrown to us. So we have to take up this challenge. We have to rise and see that, well, we have to make the best out of the situation. If I am not being able to draw psychological satisfaction from my wife, then maybe I need to talk to her, discuss things with her, and try to manage my situation. And still, if things don't improve, then I need to look on my own self, and at times connect to God more deeply. At times, look for other things like good pastimes, good hobbies that could quench my psychological thirst. So you see, it's a question of managing yourself. But what I can say is that this is not license enough for a person, that if he says that I don't get psychological satisfaction from my spouse, and hence I have now the legitimate excuse to look outside my marriage bond. Consider this to be a trial and test, and always think that all of us go through this in some form or the other, and precisely for this reason, the Almighty has created a day of judgment, and it created a day of reward, and a place of reward in which all these imperfections and all these wants that are not fulfilled here will be perfectly fulfilled in the hereafter.
The next question is from Baran Nishur. Baran, please go ahead.
Sir, my question is about the story about Gog and Magog, because in the Quran it says that they have been sealed away by a wall, but near the end times that wall will break and they will be released, and that will be like one of the signs of the end times. But my question is, are they like physically on earth, like behind a wall, or is it like a metaphor for something else, like maybe they're in another dimension? I don't know. I don't quite know. Do we have an answer for this?
Oh, actually, see, these are two separate things. Gog and Magog are mentioned twice in the Quran. The wall that you are referring to is one of the historical events that had taken place, and Gog and Magog, they were the ones who would try to invade certain territories, and excuse me, that wall was built to stop them from invading that territory. So that was just one instance in history in which the tribes of Gog and Magog would try to invade a land, and that wall was built to stop them. So Gog and Magog are a nation. They are a people. Their origin is East Asia. The Chinese and the Mongols of today, this their origin, and from there people started to leave that place. They went and inhabited US, Europe, and of course parts of Australia. And now, as the things have lined up, they are at the borders of the globe today. So these are basically people. This is a name of a civilization that is born, and the Quran tells us that near the end of time, these people would attack people from outside, as if they would be on the boundary wall, or like the end of the globe. Like they will encircle the globe, and near the end of time, they would try to conquer the rest of the world. They would succeed quite a lot, but they would not be able to enter the cities of Makkah and Medina, and this part is actually related in another place which is not in the Quran. It's in the book of Revelation in the Bible. All that the Quran tells us is that near the end of time, they will be let loose, which means that they will be allowed to attack other people, and this would ultimately result in the cataclysm that would culminate in the Day of Judgment.
Okay, but
so the point is that these are two separate things. The wall issue was in the past. It was these tribes they used to attack a place, and the wall was built to stop them, and that has happened. And that is, I mean, that's an event of history that happened, and it's finished now. But they still exist. These tribes, as I said, they are a people, they are a race, they are a civilization, and they were stopped in those times from invading a territory, and they of course got stopped. But later on, as you can see, that they are still inhabiting various parts of the earth. And the Quran tells us that near the end of times, they will attack. And with their attack, the cataclysm or the jolts that you would be witnessing on the Day of Judgment would start to occur.
Okay, does that mean that that we can see Gog and Magog as, like, for example, the Chinese, because the Chinese people have been developing quite a lot recently, and it said that they will be like the new superpower in the world. So is that like, can we see it like that, or is that
yes, yes, of course. That is one thing, and they are now they are rising, and we can see that they are reaching their pinnacle, their zenith. They are on the rise in the last. In fact, in the book of Revelations, which is the last book of the Bible, we are told that after the passing away of the prophet for 1,000 years, Satan would be enchained, and there would be things that would not happen the way we should expect him to happen. But after 1,000 years, he will be let loose, and Gog and Magog would then, their rise would begin. So their rise has already begun, and I think that this is something which is going to take us to its pinnacle, and then sometime at that time, we would be knowing that the earthquake of the Day of Judgment is going to happen. So it's like a gradual process which has started probably, but when it shall reach a certain limit, when everything would just go haywire, that still that still needs to be seen.
Thank you. We have Nashaba Wasim now, and this will be the last question for the day.
Assalamu alaikum. So my question is the ayah which you read, that Allah not burden the people more than their power. Can you explain a little bit more that verse? Like in
this means that the Sharia which the Almighty has given us is not something which is beyond our. I mean, it's not beyond our capacity. Whatever directives we are given, they are within our capacity. And this is given actually in the background that the Jews of their times, they were punished for certain reasons. And as a result, some of the Sharia directives that they were given, they were overburdened by them and they could not bear them, but as a punishment they were given. So the Quran has made this clear here that as long as we don't indulge in such things that entail any punishment, the Sharia in its pure form is something which is not beyond our capacity. It's not something that we cannot follow. It is within our capacity. And it is unlike the Sharia of, or part of the Sharia of the Jews, which was beyond their capacity or which had been made beyond their capacity because as a result of their nitpicking and hair splitting and troubling their prophets and harassing them, some of the things had become difficult for them, and some of the other things they themselves had made difficult for them. So the Quran clarifies that this new Sharia which is now being given to the Ishmaelites, it is not beyond their own capacity. It is something which they can easily follow.
सर मेरा क्वेश्चन ये कि जैसे अगर हम आम पढ़ रहे होते, अगर मैं पढ़ रही होती तो मेरे जहन में ये आता कि जो टेस्ट या ट्रायल अल्लाह ताला दे रहे हैं वो हमारी ताकत से ज्यादा हम पे नहीं होंगे. तो एक आम एज अ पर्सन अगर मैं कुरान पढ़ती हूँ तो मैं उसको फिर किस तरह अंडरस्टैंड करने के क्या वे निकालूं कि मुझे वो उसकी बैकग्राउंड से ही समझ आए?
I think, as I said, that you should just pick up a good translation of the Quran. And whenever there is a question regarding the translation, you can consult the tafsir, but don't start reading the tafsir, which I have already said that tafsirs are basically, they are like, I mean, you don't consult a dictionary. So a tafsir is like a dictionary. You read the translation of the Quran, and whenever there is a question that arises on that particular verse or a particular word that might bother you, you pick up a good tafsir or maybe ask a scholar. But otherwise, the way forward is to always read as much as you can the translation of the Quran.
So, but sir, लेकिन अगर इसकी सिर्फ मैं ट्रांसलेशन पढ़ूंगी तो मैं अपने जहन के मुताबिक इसकी इंटरप्रिटेशन कर लूंगी, लेकिन आपने अब जो बताई है वो टोटली एक डिफरेंट ये था.
So you see, that's what I'm saying, that when you pick up a translation and it doesn't make sense to you, or you maybe have some questions about that translation, so why just consult a good tafsir or a scholar that you might trust. That is the way forward. And if you keep listening to such lectures, maybe, or keep listening to these explanations of certain parts of the Quran, it will continue to increase your knowledge.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Shehzad, for an amazing session and answering all our questions. Inshallah, we'll see each other tomorrow.